We've got a really exciting call today. Obviously, the big change being it is me sat here talking instead of Tom. Um, but we're going to hear from Kate and Joe from CACN and ArtGene about the Catalyst project and talk through the learnings from that project. And then we've got Chris Bridgman chatting about Cockermouth Live, and Sally's going to tell us all about the Cry of the Curlew exhibition at Kendal Museum. So a really exciting call this morning. Um, would you like to begin, Kate?
I will. Okay, yes. Okay, so I am Kate Parry. For those who don't know me, I am chair of Cumbria Arts and Culture Network. It's just worth saying to begin with that I left my day job this week after 8 years with Cumbria Museum Consortium. I decided to make the break and do something else, and that something else will primarily be focused on sustaining Cumbria Arts and Culture Network. One or two other things here and there maybe, but there is a job of work to do to make sure that the network has a future, and it needs focus. So that's what I'm going to do. But it does feel rather strange from going from a salaried job for the last 25 years to not having a salary, and so it's a risk, but it's one that I'm quite happy to take. So that's me, and what we wanted to talk to you about this morning is what we've kind of distilled so far from the Catalyst programme in terms of learning about the process and things that we can pass on to anybody who might be making an application or a proposal in the future. So I'm just going to start by, Amy, if you could share the screen. I'm just going to remind you really what Catalyst was. So very quickly going to whip through some slides that some of you will have seen before, just to sort of set the scene. And then after that, Joe is going to talk about the process we went through. And then I'm going to talk a little bit more about the sort of shortlisting and interviewing, what we learned specifically through that and what we could perhaps recommend. And Joe will finish with some top tips. But what I want to start by saying is that this is very much a journey. We're all learning through this process, and we want the sector, we want to learn as a sector through this process, and it's actually why we signed up to deliver this project in the first place. Okay, next slide. So Catalyst is a partnership project. It's been delivered in partnership by Cumbria Arts and Culture Network, ArtGene, where Joe and Maddie works, many of you will know, in Barrow, and the University of Cumbria, represented by Karen Jones and Colette Conroy. It's funded by Cumbria Local Enterprise Partnership, and it's something that emerged through participation in what's called the sector panel for the creative and culture sector that I've been sitting on for quite a few years. And in this project, this opportunity emerged through that. Joe Lappin, who runs the LEP, made available a chunk of funding, and we were
speaking her board, Kate, not her personally.
Yes, you're absolutely right. The Cumbria LEP through Joe Lappin. Yes, it's not Joe's money. Made available a chunk of money so that we could create artist residencies in Cumbria. That was the essence of it, and we decided to apply as a partnership. It was a big decision to apply, and there were a number of other sort of groups of organisations who also applied. The reason it was a big decision is that we had to move very, very quickly, and also you have to accept that the funder has a reason for doing this, and therefore stipulations that we needed to sort of embrace. More of that in a minute, but next slide please. We decided we would apply, we were successful, and then we created Catalyst with the money. We decided to create 3 substantial £25,000 residencies, where each artist would work in Cumbria for 10 months. So we have a really good opportunity to develop their own practice.
I think it's worth saying, Kate, we had a pre-meet with the LEP, and it was their desire that the money was used in this way, you know, that the bursary should be substantial,
yeah,
and less, for example, about, you know, like 25 £1,000 ones. So, you know, again, it was shaped with the funder, wasn't it?
It was, because this was really about wanting to explore and celebrate and make possible careers as an artist in Cumbria. That's sort of at the root of this whole thing. So next slide, please. So it was an open call nationally. That again was a stipulation of the LEP. This was not just to be for Cumbrian artists. It was about, to some extent, shining a light on Cumbria. We made the decision that it should be for an artist of any discipline, and we were really clear about that, and we wanted that range of applications. The residencies could be based anywhere in Cumbria. We had half an eye on the fact that we wanted a sort of a good geographical spread, but that was not as important as other factors. And we were trying to create the chance to create striking new work in Cumbria to fire people's imaginations. So that's what it is. Okay, next slide. Specifically, this is for artists who were early to mid-career. That's not necessarily easy to define, and we decided not to try to define it too much, but this was about giving a boost to somebody's career, not necessarily sustaining the work of somebody who was, you know, a long way into a fully established career. We wanted artists to be able to show a strong and authentic commitment to Cumbria. That was part of the sort of negotiation, if you like, in the early stages of developing the project with the LEP. Artists would need to be resident in Cumbria to develop their work, and they would need to be able to work within the timetable set by the LEP. Next. This was the brief to artists, developed sort of collaboratively. If you apply to Catalyst, you'll be very familiar with it, but the idea was that it responds to modern day Cumbria, it raises the visibility of Cumbria, it celebrates Cumbria as a place. We're looking for ideas that disrupt and inspire, and unlock new opportunities, and that the work has a lasting quality. Also that the work can be experienced by as many people as possible. So it was, I think, in the end, a really challenging and exciting brief, and in fact that's a lot of the feedback that we had. Next. So that is essentially what Catalyst is, and I'm going to hand over now to Joe just to explain a little bit more about what the process was and how it worked.
Thank you. So yeah, we advertised, we wrote the brief very quickly. All of this was done very quickly. What Kate didn't say was that we'd never worked together before. So all organisations were on this cultural panel of the LEP, and had met, you know, inevitably online over a number of years to talk about LEP cultural panel business. But ArtGene, CACN and the university had not ever, you know, come together before. So obviously all of that had to be negotiated and relationships formed. And I think that's worked really well. You know, there's been a terrific bond, I think, between the people involved. So yeah, we wrote the brief. ArtGene has lots of experience of creating artist in residence opportunities. So we took on that side of the project, and CACN took on kind of the development of the mentoring offer, and the university were always going to provide, you know, facilities, infrastructure, studio space. So it was a nice balance between the partners. we produced the brief. You'll remember we came on CACN. There were lots of questions on a Friday call, and then there were follow-up questions to me. And on the back of all of those questions, we published an FAQ document that went onto our website, which I hope was helpful in just clarifying a few things. Yeah, so quite a hectic time. I should just say I'm ArtGene's fundraiser. I became for about a month ArtGene's administrator and Catalyst dog's body. It was pretty full on, and I have to say there was a time there where I wasn't really doing very much else. So that was all, you know, ArtGene's pro bono time invested in this. It became quite a thing. So we were just talking this morning, Kate and I, about, you know, whether we were naive. Some of you have written to us and said we were naive in expecting or setting a target of 45. And, you know, in the early days, I was watching them coming in, you know, drips and drabs. And we're thinking we were going to get to 45, and we told the LEP, you know, that would be why they should give it to us. You know, we'll generate at least 45 applications, so each bursary will have, you know, a good choice around it. There'll be only 14 people who miss out in each case. Picture the scene on the day of the closing date, where I'm moving house, haven't really got Wi-Fi, so I'm down my local pub using their Wi-Fi. I'm desperately buying more Microsoft storage from California, because all of these artists are sending me like files that are massive, and they're literally coming in one a minute. All that afternoon of the deadline day, they're coming in. I'm like sitting there trying to manage this amazing process. So that was an extraordinary day, which I won't ever forget. And if there's a lesson learned for a grants administrator, if there's any of them on the call, don't ever set a deadline on a Sunday, because it's utterly miserable. Anyway, we you know, generated a huge amount of interest, and we should give some credit here to Tom, who's on the call, and the comms team at CACN and at the LEP, who really got the word out. And we had applications from all over the UK, and in fact internationally as well, although I think interestingly the ones that were from people who were based in places like London and New York tended to be the weakest. So yeah, I did an initial screening of all those 2, 3, 4. I had engaged in dialogue with people all the way through the weeks of application. And if I spotted things that were missing from people's applications, I would write to them and say, you know, you've still got time before the deadline. You haven't sent a CV. You know, we won't be able to put your application forward unless you send us a CV. One memorable man said, I don't do CVs. So that was his choice, but I'm afraid he was not shortlisted. So yeah, an eligibility check, very standard in funding circles. I spent 16 years working in a funding organisation, and then we went to scoring. And so because of the number, we felt there were too many to involve our external panel at the first stage, because they were not being paid enough to look at 234. So our internal panel scored them initially based on the criteria that was in the brief. So that was set out really clearly in the brief. Number one, we were scoring on artistic quality and ambition, demonstrating a strong and authentic commitment to Cumbria, experience of applying creative practice within a socially engaged setting, strong communication skills and the ability to work with a wide range of people, committed to residing in Cumbria and actively contributing to the Cumbrian creative community. That was really important. And then a commitment to sustainability and helping to ensure a zero carbon Cumbria. So they were weighted, obviously, you know, quality and commitment to Cumbria were the stronger ones. There was less weighting given to sustainability, not to say that we didn't think that was important. But interestingly, there were many people who didn't actually reference sustainability at all, which I thought was quite interesting in the current climate. Excuse the pun. So we did that initial sift, and that got us to our top 60. And then after a little break, to go and do something else for a couple of days to give a bit of headspace, there's another sift, largely based on artistic quality and the Cumbrian thing. Got down to 20, and that was really hard. That bit was difficult, getting from 60 to 20, because we're in the realms of really good applications at this stage. The external panel then, consisting of people from across disciplines and outside Cumbria, got to see the top 20. They were scored. We always said in the brief that we would interview between 9 and 12 people. Again, so there was a bit of competition in the interview process, and in the end we selected 11 for interview. Kate.
Okay, should we just close down the presentation for a moment then, because we just wanted to talk a little bit about the shortlisting, and I wanted to reflect really on what stood out about the best applications when we were going through the shortlisting process. And these are my own reflections, really. First of all, the quality of the artwork jumped out at times and made it very easy. What we found was that the best proposals were ambitious. The idea was ambitious, but it was clearly articulated, and it was simply expressed. Often the shortest proposals were the best. And those written in plain English, no, that sounds daft, but the really clear but ambitious proposals were good. The really clear proposals with a really clear commitment to Cumbria stood out as well. And it was not necessarily about living here. It was not necessarily about having been born and bred here. Sometimes it was much more subtle, but still convincing. Those proposals that met all of the elements of the brief in full were the best, and especially those that took each element of the brief one by one and responded point by point. As somebody looking at an initial 75 applications, it just made it so much easier to see the brief broken down with a response element by element. Also, we could tell where people had thought very deeply about the brief and their response to it, and had conveyed their own excitement and their own passion. And it was, some of them were very moving. There were some that moved me to tears, actually, and especially where video was involved. And I would say that applications that contained video were particularly powerful, and that got the emotion and the excitement across. Also, proposals that were really clear about what the artist was trying to achieve themselves and how Catalyst would help them get there. That sort of, the narrative was clear. We were moved, I think, by the ones that were sincere and authentic and not overblown. Again, that's about using plain English and not as I often find myself doing when I'm writing a funding application, which I appreciate is different to an artist's proposal. It's easy to lapse into fancy funding language, or language that's not yours, and those were more difficult to read, those proposals. Really good images and links to videos that were very accessible in the application, and where we had to root around in an application to look for many videos and to click from one link to another, when that moved me to tears in a different way when it's kind of midnight and you're trying to make sense of the links in somebody's bid. I would just say that it was easier to get the best of a proposal where it was easy to see what was being presented.
And the person who sent me 10 images in 10 different emails, and then the CV in another email, and then the expression of interest in another email on the last day, yeah, drove me to distraction.
Yeah, I think that, you know, packaging it effectively so that it's really easy for the person shortlisting to see it is just helpful. So just to say, when we were shortlisting, in the end it was difficult, but actually there was no argument at all. It was for the reasons that I've just said, the shortlisted people stood out ultimately. So just moving on quickly to interviewing, we pulled together a panel of people from across different disciplines and within and external to Cumbria. So myself, Maddie Nicholson, Colette Conroy, Sui Anuka, who is based in London and who is an amazing writer and an all-round wonderful woman. Fiona Venables used to run Tully in Carlisle, but she's now chief exec of the Milton Keynes Arts Centre. And Andrew Deakin from Fulham Noises, who many of you will know. That was our panel. Just to say why we chose the final 3 artists, the interviewing was amazing. For me, it was a really privileged experience, and all the people we spoke to were wonderful, and it was heartbreaking to have to choose 3. But the ones that we chose came across as quietly sincere, as passionate about their work. They'd submitted ambitious but clear proposals, and they could also articulate how they were deliverable. They were really clear about what Catalyst would do for their own practice. They were very willing to engage with communities of one kind or another and to work collaboratively. Also, they were able to articulate how they were contributing to the development of the sector in Cumbria, which sounds a bit grand, but I think there was a sense of, this is what I'll be able to share with others in the sector as I go through the Catalyst process. We were guided to some extent in our final choice by the fact that we wanted a spread of art forms. So we did end up with a spoken word artist, a painter, and a musician, but that wasn't our main goal. It was just a guiding factor. So those are my observations, and I just want to finish now, at least Joe's going to finish with our top tips for creating a really great proposal. So could we just have the presentation back again?
Yeah, so the first point, you know, is perhaps a little administrative, but as Kate says, it does make a difference to the people who are looking at something. If you can present, first of all, apply in a timely manner. I know obviously a deadline is a deadline, and I'm not suggesting you don't apply on the deadline, but applying a minute before a 5 p.m. deadline, you know, it's usually not a great idea. And we had a few people who applied after the deadline, who just for information, you know, we if they were within half an hour, which is generally what funders would do, we accepted them. If they do the classic thing of send an email with no attachments, saying I attach all of my attachments, but there weren't any. You know, been around the block a few times, and I wasn't falling for that one. So yeah, be timely, provide concise information, provide only what's asked for. I thought for 25k, you know, based on all of my personal funding experience and personal experience of applying for many jobs over the years, I thought what we asked for was very proportionate. 10 pieces of work, a CV, and you know, 500 words to express your strong ideas. 500 words isn't much, in my opinion, and it meant that, you know, the artist had to do some kind of quite deep thinking, and be very considerate in the way that they put forward their proposal. Yeah, as Kate said, use of video and images. Actually, some of my favourite, they weren't shortlisted, but some of my favourite applications were talking heads. So where the artist, sat in front of the video and didn't write 500 words, but presented their idea verbally, and that was perfectly acceptable, and that was made clear in the brief, and they were lovely. So thank you for those people who did that. Check your applications been received. There was some disappointment. I acknowledged every single application that came into my inbox. Tried to do it almost immediately. Obviously, when on that last afternoon, or perhaps even the 3 days beforehand, I was getting lots and lots and lots. So there's a bit of a lag in, but I did give every single person an acknowledgement of receipt, with perhaps 2 or 3 exceptions, for which I apologise. If I would say that if you don't get one of those, then do check in. There were people who tell me that they applied and didn't hear from me. And I don't know, where those applications went. I didn't receive them. And we could have done something about that, perhaps, had I understood that a bit earlier. Yeah, really, really important to meet the brief. I'm struck, actually, as we're speaking, that Kate and I have both got a bit of a public sector background. We're both very used to the culture whereby you get a local authority type application process, with a job description or a call, which has criteria in it. And perhaps we are both used to writing in that way, where you take one point at a time and make sure that you've covered the whole brief. I could imagine that if you have been a freelance artist for all of your career, that perhaps that wouldn't come as naturally. And maybe some would say, stop trying to shove us into that boring public sector kind of box, and allow us to say what we want to say in ways that are suit our particular brain and way of working, which I think is a fair comment. But somewhere in what you present, you need to make sure that you're meeting the brief, because it's only on the brief that people are scoring. They're not scoring on who they know or what connections they've had in the past. And in fact, we had a very rigorous conflict of interest process built into all of this. And people stepped away from assessing applications where they knew people. Unbelievable things happened, things I never thought I would see in Cumbria, where Maddie, for example, got 3 phone calls from people's parents saying, oh, I just want to, flag that my son has made an application. Have you seen it? It was really quite an eye-opener, quite extraordinary. Kate's talked about this as well, striking that balance between depth of thought and readability. So, we don't need highfalutin language. We don't need lots of theory unless it's incredibly integral to your work. But yeah, we do need to I think we need to have seen an editing process, to see that you've really thought hard about what you want to do, and that you've refined that into your 500 words. And inevitably there were some that were extremely rushed, and that came through. And then I think the 3 that were chosen, it seemed to me anyway, that they really offered something of themselves. A lot of the ones that went out early, it was just about them, really about them and their career. And the 3 artists that were shortlisted in particular offered something really substantial to Cumbria and to this group. And I think we've seen over the weeks so far since the selection that they've already, contributed to these calls and shared something of themselves. I just wrote kind of something down about each of them. So Emma, in her 500 words, referenced the women of West Cumbria, as being really important drivers to everything she wanted to achieve. She quoted them directly. We never hear voices like this, said the women of West Cumbria in response to her work. And I was struck by, that authenticity that's mentioned here in this slide. So Emma wrote, you know, Cumbria is, or the West Coast is a fundamental part of my identity. You know, that was really kind of strong language and responded to the brief really well.
I think, Jo, sorry to interrupt, if you could round up quickly, so we've
Yeah.
got a couple of minutes for questions, that would be
Thank
brilliant.
you, Imogen. Just very briefly, Azra, my connection with Cumbria has always been intricate. That was her opening line. My connection with Cumbria has always been intricate. That just kind of, oh, it just makes you want to read on. And Azra says, I'm interested in the idea of contributing a painting to Cumbria. So she wanted to literally give a painting long term to the county. What a lovely idea. And then Jack, his whole piece was about partnerships. Every part of his application was referencing other people in Cumbria, people he'd worked with, people he wanted to work with. It was all about, you know, enhancing the artistic scene in Cumbria together, and having a respect for what was already there and how he might modestly contribute. So yeah, thank you very much. Sorry, Imogen.
That's quite all right. Well, thank you so much, Kate and Jo, for talking through that. Does anyone have any questions, just really quickly, that we can cover? Derek at the bottom.
I'm always at the bottom, yes. I just wondered, what interests me is the gulf between the number of applications you expected and the number you received. And I wonder what explains that. Was it just an underestimate, or were there a number of applications which really were not in with the faintest chance?
Okay, so I think then the answer to that is both of those things. I think we did underestimate and we were naive, and we take that on the chin. We were working a little bit blind, really. I think this kind of opportunity for that level of money, of investment, is rare. So of course there was going to be a good response, but it's also true that there were quite a lot of applications that we looked at in the early stages that were a long way from meeting the brief, a long way, and so were taken out relatively quickly. But that's only a proportion, obviously. The rest, well, to be honest, what I would like to say is that we worked really hard to give every single applicant an application the best possible chance, and we spent a long time on each one, and we didn't discount until we were absolutely certain. But all of those things are true, Derek, and you know, we're living and learning, aren't we? I think Amy was
next. Question from Amy.
Yeah, I just wondered about the 500-word statement, which is often what people get asked to contribute. If somebody's sort of fairly under that, do you think, you know, if you can explain your idea in less than 500 words, is that going to be seen as that, you know, that you haven't made enough effort, or how close to that 500 words do you think you need to be?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go first. I would say it's the strength of your idea and what you've written, and the 500 words is a guide. Like I said earlier, some of the best were the shortest.
Okay.
There's a question from Anne as well. If it just last one, and then we'll move on to Sally.
I mean, I have an awful lot of questions, but I think the key one is how do we capture the value of all of that unsuccessful application and all of the amazing work that went into your 234? I mean, I sat down and looked at if an artist fee is £300 a day and everybody spent 2 days on their application, and some will have spent a lot more than that on a really good one, that's £134,000 worth of work, which is more than the 3 commissions added together. And I just feel that, I mean, I didn't apply, I stepped away from it because it was not right for me for a number of reasons. But I feel that especially because this is LEP driven, the enterprise and business organisation for the county. Hopefully, have they learned anything from this? Have they learned a bit more about the sector and about the artists that are actually in Cumbria and what they need in terms of career development and opportunities? Yeah. That's quite a lot of questions. It's a big conversation, but I felt it was important.
It is a big conversation, and it's not ending here. It's just starting here. And I think the reason we've partnered with the University and ArtGene is that we feel best able to evaluate the whole situation together and learn and feed that through to people who need to listen to us. And we can quantify the time that went into it. That's fine. I think there is value in all of those applications beyond the cost, the financial cost of them. And we have had a lot of feedback from people actually saying, I'm glad I put a proposal in because I learned something through the process and actually it's moved me on in that process. Now, we absolutely recognise how much effort people put in, and the fact that in 231 cases, they're not going to be financially recompensed at that point. But what we want to do is help people going forward to get as much as possible out of the whole experience. And it doesn't end here. And I really wanted to finish by saying that we will continue to work as a partnership. We are absolutely determined to squeeze as much as we can out of this, not just in terms of learning, but also in ongoing opportunities. And we are looking at more funding applications that will help us go back to those original applicants and be able to do more with and for those artists. So that is very much work in progress.
Just very briefly, Joe Lappin also is, Catalyst was Joe Lappin and the CLEP's last hurrah. They're about to be wound up, so they won't exist going forward, but she is, to her credit, influencing other funders in Cumbria about culture and the need for more investment in culture. So watch this space.
Yeah, there's a much bigger conversation, and in a way that's why we decided to take this project on, because it's a conversation that we want to get hold of and have rather than walk away from. I think that's our responsibility as CACN and the university and ArtGene. So let's keep having the conversation and we will keep updating, but I'm really conscious that we have spoken probably for long enough, and thank you, Imogen, for bearing with us.
Well, thank you so much for sharing, Kate and Joe. I think it's lovely that you're giving everyone such insight into the process, because that doesn't often happen with a big application process like this. I think it's really great to do that. And yeah, everyone can learn from that, which is brilliant. Right, we're going to move on to Sally with Cry of the Curlew, which is an exhibition at Kendal Museum, which I'm really excited to hear about. It looks absolutely amazing. Do you want to come off mute, Sally?
Right, I'm here, hopefully.
Hello, Sally.
Hi. Hi, everybody. Yes, it's a really lovely opportunity to come and talk to you all about this Cry of the Curlew exhibition that's at Kendal. I'm just going to kind of do a little bit of context because I know we've got a lovely little video just to show you about it. But if I can just kind of put it into how we've got to Kendal. Paco Valera and his partner Barbara are photographer and poet. And they approached the Dales Countryside Museum in Hawes to do an exhibition based on the curlew so that we could raise awareness of it, because obviously it's a red listed species. And we are so fortunate in the Dales that we have a lot of them. But a lot of people don't see them, or they only see them on the coast, like you guys at Morecambe Bay. And we see them inland, and this whole kind of journey of birds in two places. And so Fiona from the exhibition, from the museum, she pulled various of us together to contribute. Me being me, took it literally, and followed a curlew for a year, from the coast back to the moor and back to the coast again. So I produced a body of work, literally curlew calling, looking at that journey. And lots of people looked at the Curlew from the conservation point of view, from looking at it from a farmer's point of view. And June did a fantastic interview film with farmers that were working to actively support curlews in their environment. Sarah did some work with schools. And so all these things were pulled together, and we had this fantastic exhibition, which in my naive little head thought, well, that's just going to stay in Hawes, isn't it? And then Barbara had approached Michael at Kendal Museum, who, bless him, has said, oh, that was a really good idea. Yes, of course, we'd love to host it. So me naively thinking I was just going to be working kind of very locally. We've now got this excitement that we've kind of crossed over to Kendal, which has been amazing, because some of us have come in, but we've actually got new people from the Cumbria area that have done artworks to do with the Curlew in as well. So it's lovely, because it's a kind of organic process, and it's shaping itself in a slightly different way. So we've got a gentleman called Dr. William Titley, who's a part of In Situ, and he's done some walking landscape project. So he's got some work up there as well. We've got Sarah Smith, who does wire sculptures. She's based on the coast. So she's put some lovely stuff in there as well. We've got the South Lakes Curlew Partnership there, and we've got some children's work as well. So although we started with a project in Yorkshire, it's kind of, I don't know, it's just organically grown into what it's now at the museum. And what I've loved about being part of it is that we've all got such a passion about preserving this bird, which is so iconic, but we could be the last generation that hear it if there's not a lot of input. And people have embraced it in lots of different ways. So we've got representations from sculpture, we've got representations from the music on the background of the interviews, we've got personal sort of reflections. And my thing was lino cuts. So I've done a series of 12 lino cuts for each month of the year, and what the Curlew is doing. But I dragged my daughter, who's a photographer, so we put together a kind of little book of Curlew calling, of literally going from, we were on the Northumberland coast and watching them on the coast, and then bringing them back into the Dales, and all the nesting and the eggs and the hatching and what wasn't happening. And that's where Sarah got the kids involved as well, and they were mapping where nests were. And so there was a kind of lovely marriage of the kind of science and the ecology and the conservation side of it with artistic response to that. And so, yes, it's a lovely exhibition. We're very privileged to be able to bring it over. Like I said, it wasn't part of the thought process originally. Yeah, it's a super thing to be part of. We're going to have tomorrow. Yes, it is tomorrow. Tomorrow we've got an activities day where we're all going to be doing little half-hour slots throughout the day. All the information's on the Kendal Museum website. And hopefully we'll have lots of people through the door who will have conversations. And I'm going to be there in residence all day tomorrow, and on 2 further days when the museum's open later this month. But it's just been a smashing thing. So yeah, let's have a little look-see. And this is what it looks like when you walk upstairs. So this is right at the top of the museum, because a purpose-built area to house us. Bless them. And there's this lovely backdrop of the Curlew calling all the time when you walk round. and we've got children's work from Cumbria locally. I love that. I absolutely love that mural. It's beautiful. And we've got a competition as well. And so the last day theoretically is today. I loved what you said earlier about half an hour afterwards. Well, tomorrow we've got a drawing session tomorrow, so that will be the last time that anybody can do anything towards that competition. And yes, I just hope that it provokes a response in people to just think about it. Think about these red listed species that we are very, very fortunate to have in our area, really. And if by doing what I do, somebody goes, oh, I really like that. What is it? Let me find out a little bit more. Job done, isn't it? It's just another way to engage people with the environment.
I think it's brilliant the way that it draws attention to that one species, because it makes it so clear for everyone that species needs to be protected. Because I didn't realise that curlews were on the red list. I had no idea, but now I do.
What I found quite shocking actually when I was in residence at Hawes was the fact that we had lovely visitors, some of who were local, obviously, some of whom were on holiday. And my friend came up from Devon and she said, I only ever see them on the coast. They're a coastal bird. And I'm going, no, but they're a moorland, they're an upland bird as well. And because they're a bird, literally a bird of two worlds, that people have a particular relationship with them in place. So it's very much a very personal response for people, because that call, we can hear it on the moors for miles, or you'll hear it across Morecambe Bay for miles, but it'll have a sense of place. And I think it's so evocative that, you know, people, I don't know why, but it has such a visceral kind of response in people that they hear that and they go, yeah. And it'd just be such a shame to lose it, really.
It is a beautiful, beautiful sound, the cry of the curlew. I think it's really lovely that you've included work from schools in the exhibition, because I'm just thinking if I back to small child me, how excited I would have been to have my artwork displayed in a proper gallery. That would have been a lifetime achievement for small Imogen. So I'm sure they've all really, really relished being a part of that.
And it's lovely. I love when you see the kids' drawings. There were some smashing ones from the schools in Settle, so I'm really looking forward to seeing more of the ones from the Cumbria schools. But they were literally kind of drawn on cardboard, and somebody'd obviously said, you know, they've been out, like you said, they've been to see curlew, and they'd just come back with those big brushes, and they were just like, right, this is what a curlew looks like. And it was magic, because they were just so fresh. It was, this is what a curlew was like in my head. No pretense. It was just literally kind of raw art, and it was magic. And the things that the kids were writing, I was just thinking, if one of those kids gets to be an adult that looks after curlews, that's magic, you know. But yes.
Oh, well, thank you so much for sharing, Sally. It's just sounds like a beautiful exhibition. I would like to have been able to get down to Kendal to see it. I wish I wasn't so busy, because
we're there till the 17th of August.
70. Oh, well, in that case,
August.
hopefully I can have a trip down.
Yes, I have a trip down. And obviously the museum's only open for 3 days. But there's no cost to going upstairs. Just if you're going into the museum, you've got free rein to go everywhere, and we're just upstairs and come and see. And I can give you when I'm there, if anybody's interested and wants to come and have a chat with me, I can give you the dates if you want to circulate to people and come and have a chat and talk curlews.
Fantastic. Well, that was just lovely to hear about. I find that, yeah, really inspiring, actually. So thank you so much, Sally, for sharing all about the Cry of the Curlew exhibition at Kendal Museum. Right, we're going to move on to Chris Bridgman, who's going to tell us all about Cockermouth Live, which is in my hometown. So I'm really looking forward to Cockermouth coming to life over the next few days. Well, next weekend, just to be clear. It's always a lovely, lovely experience, and the town really comes to life. I'll hand over to you, Chris. And we've got
Thank you.
some slides to share as well.
Yes, load of slides which I'll power through because I realise we're getting close to.
Sorry, we've not left you with much time.
No, that's fine. I shall gabble away. Yeah, this very weekend, actually starting
Is
today.
it this weekend? Of course it's this weekend. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, and you're on tomorrow, by the way. I have to
No.
point out certain people on this call are quite heavily involved one way or the other. Yes, so Cockermouth Live has been going for, I think this is the 15th iteration. And as you can see, people have a lovely time at it. These are pictures from last year. Goes on all across the town. Next slide. We have 3 ticketed gigs, all of which are sold out. This is Blazing Fiddles, fantastic Scottish folk band, which is on tonight at the Curgate, sold out. Next slide. The Cockermouth Mechanics Band, one of the oldest surviving brass bands in the world, very well established local institution. And tomorrow evening in Cockermouth Castle, which is one of the venues, Lord and Lady Egremont allow us to go and play in their courtyard. And tomorrow evening there's Brass on the Grass, which is a sort of picnic brass band event, also sold out. And next slide. On Sunday, the grand finale in Christchurch is the Cockermouth Community Orchestra, led by the fantastic Phil Wood. And that's always a joyous occasion. And that, I think, is sold out as well. However,
No, not yet. No, not yet.
Oh, still right. If you talk to the right people, you might get a ticket for that.
There's 20 tickets left.
Oh, right. Okay. Beg your pardon. Okay. So there you go. Sunday evening, 7 o'clock in Christchurch. Next slide. But the heart and soul of the festival really is local performers from Cockermouth, West Cumbria, all across Cumbria, and indeed some travelling further afield. Performing for the love of it. It's free to the audiences. They don't get paid. We don't get paid, the organisers of the festival. It's completely non-profit operation. So here we've got ancient music, rock and roll, Scottish dancing, and a squirrel, which Imogen will be able to tell you more about. Lots of music, but many other things as well. Next slide. Included in the programme at the Castle, Tom Salmon, formerly of the BBC, who goes and operates under the name of Oh My Days, has curated a little programme of emerging Cumbrian artists, Cumbrian singers, singer-songwriters, Char, Laura Bailey, and Grace Price. That's on Saturday afternoon up at the Castle, where I'm pleased to say we have got a marquee which will cover the performers if the weather isn't totally lovely, and also a marquee which will cover at least some of the audience if that's necessary. Hopefully it'll stay as it is at the moment, nice and bright and sunny in Cockermouth, but we can't count on it, can we? Next slide, please. Also, as part of the festival this year, and this is an innovation, we're having a buskathon. So in the area outside Sainsbury's, there's a nice central area in the middle of town. So there's a programme of people performing on the streets, very varied, as you'll see, from singer-songwriter Birdseed through at least one person you might recognise, the Pat Castle Wind Quintet, and then there's Tim and Helen Elvin, fantastic folk performers. So a very varied programme in the buskathon going on through Saturday. Next slide, please. That also includes performances by 2 visiting outfits that we've been able to bring in thanks to some very successful funding applications. This is Dan Fox, who is sometimes on this call, and his Boom Bikes Bourrée, who will be moving around the town doing their medieval hip-hop performance. Next, please. And they will be one of the slots of the buskathon. Also at the buskathon is Blue Jam, Gilly Jarman's outfit in Penrith, coming over to do a workshop, percussion workshop, and then performing their samba with horns as part of the buskathon as well. So that's one of the opportunities to actually get involved. There are loads of opportunities to just sit back and enjoy, but we've got loads of opportunities to actually participate creatively. So one of them is the percussion workshop, 12:30. Next slide, please. And Scottish Country Dancing is doing a taster session on Saturday afternoon, and there on the bottom left, first thing on Saturday morning at Wordsworth House, Wordsworth Grasmere, the Dove Cottage lot, are doing a couple of sessions for tiny people, creative craft and writing sessions at Wordsworth House. Next, please. And on both days, the very lovely print workshop and marketplace is offering free drop-in printmaking workshops using Tetra Paks, your drinks cartons, which you can make into printing plates and run off and then create these 3D animals. Yes, you can turn the big wheel and make your own prints. That's both days. Next slide, please. And on the Sunday, through the day, we've got Ragtag Arts, wonderful outfit based down in Kendal, who do lots of creative things with materials gained from industry and elsewhere that avoids them going to landfill. So the Ragtag Roadshow, that caravan that opens up and offers the scrappy play area, lots of opportunities to make, build and create artwork and crafts there. Next slide, please. This is the interior of the castle, looking very lovely last year. There's the marquee I mentioned. So yes, starting tonight with blazing fiddles, but then the whole of the town animated through Saturday and Sunday, all sorts of venues, pubs, cafes, the Kirkgate Centre, the castle, the churches. Please do come along if you can. There will be something to please everybody, I can very confidently guarantee. There are brochures available. The website has more up-to-date schedules. And if we go on to the final slide, there's a website you can dive onto. And there you go. So thank you very much. Haven't got, oh, I'm dead on 10:30. How was that?
Amazing. Very speedy, Chris. I'm impressed. And yes, I'm sorry for thinking that it's next weekend, even though I'm performing tomorrow. That's impressive, even by my standards. Yeah. I think my lack of sleep over staying up watching the election results come in has I think it's got to me.
Oh yes, shout out for Poets Out Loud as Phil has thrown in there at the Wordsworth House. Yes, people promoting themselves shamelessly on the chat there.
Where does she find the time?
Yeah, very impressive.
Right then, Imogen, are we done? I
think we are. Well, thank you so much to Joe and Kate for coming and talking about the Catalyst project and sharing that all with us, and for Sally for telling us all about the beautiful Cry of the Curlew exhibition, and last but not least to Chris for getting all of that Cockermouth Live information through those slides very quickly. That was impressive. And yeah, thank you for putting up with me on my first adventure in chairing the
well done, Imogen.
Yeah.
Well done. And thank you for taking the chair for the next few weeks. We'll see everybody soon then.
Yep. Goodbye, everyone. Thanks so much for joining.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Everyone.